super excited tonight. I say tonight when we're recording. This has been a long time coming. For those who listen to Disconnected, you'll already know this name. For those of you that don't, you should. But tonight we are very lucky to be joined by Will Dodson, professor of media studies over at UNC Greensboro, amongst many other hats. Will, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Uh, sorry it took so long for this to happen, but I've been a big fan of your when you pop into Ryan's channel for a long time now.
That guy. Oh man. Well, he'll let anybody on. Uh, no, I've been yeah, I'm a he's a really great guy, and I reached out to him after stumbling upon his channel, and I've really enjoyed not just his show but all the shows that he's gotten connected to, which is I guess one of the reasons for the name of his show. So through him, I kind of started listening to you, and I can't tell you how honored I am to have a chance to talk with you.
Well, likewise. So I think this is true. I know that Ben Modell we had on does some classes every once in a while, but I believe you're the first full-time media studies professor that we've had on the show. So it's very big honor for me as well to have you on. And I thought if you're open to it, we would start by just kind of walking through a little bit about some of the cool stuff you've done, like with Tobe Hooper, some of the great stuff you've done around world cinema, genre cinema, and kind of define rhetoric and let that work its way into the main topic, which is going to be this idea that I've had brewing for a long time, and I'm so excited to finally get to talk to you about it, about really digging into what it means to tell a good story.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
aw-
Yeah.
awesome, wonderful. Well, if you were going to be known for one thing on your gravestone, I think you want it to be your work with Tobe Hooper. Is that fair to say?
So far, yeah, for sure. I was very lucky to have a great writing and editing partner named Kris Woofter up in Montreal, and after we're big Tobe Hooper fans, and after he passed, we kind of had a discussion with some other uh, film scholars about how there wasn't a comprehensive quote unquote scholarly book
Uh-huh.
about Hooper. There have been a lot of popular press and journalistic and fan scholarship and all that, which is great. But most of it's focused on either Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Poltergeist or
Mhm.
a couple of us other larger profile films, and we wanted to do something comprehensive that also, not that he needed it, but in the academic world, brought some legitimacy to the full career of Hooper, because there was so much that people hadn't, that was underseen, that was under discussed, that was underrated. And so we put together a really nice collection of writers, like way better than me. Um, and Appropriately, thank goodness, the University of Texas Press was receptive, and
Yeah.
the book came together, and we managed to get a copy to Joe Bob Briggs, who gave it his seal of approval, and
That's awesome.
did an interview with us, and that's been that. Yeah, American Twilight, the Cinema of Tobe Hooper on University of Texas Press. Yeah, I'd say that'd probably be my gravestone.
More so than having kids and the work you do with students every day. That's the thing that
Yeah, yeah. Well, they can remember me in their own ways. Yeah.
exactly. They don't need a gravestone. That's awesome. Well, so I mean, I'm sure there's a whole podcast just in this question, but at a high level, why Tobe Hooper? I think that's fascinating because I've loved his films as well. But yeah, I'd be curious what why the strong attraction there.
Um, there's I guess the word that I would associate with Hooper that kind of distinguishes him from the other masters of horror, Carpenter and Craven, Cronenberg, um, Romero, etc., is grit. There's this grittiness to his movies, and he has this really unique um, integration of humor and horror and not just horror but terror uh,
Yeah.
and intensity. And one of the things that I think is a through line in the book, and it's interesting because there are like 15, 16 contributors to this book, um, is that kind of all of us feel this intensity. Not that other filmmakers don't have their own kind of intensity, but there's something about Hooper's that is very, um, I guess we argue, very much about this American, um, I guess what it's apocryphal, but Jimmy Carter, right, when he was president, was kind of credited with talking about this American malaise.
Yeah.
But I think Hooper really was in there, and there's a lot of critique of um, American capitalism, global capitalism, in all of the filmmakers that I just mentioned, Romero probably in particular.
Sure.
But Hooper really captured the the sense of resentment and rage that accompanied the decline of the middle class, and he was predicting it way before MAGA, and I think that's what attracted us to him kind of intuitively
Yeah.
as young film fans. I mean, you watch a film like Texas Chainsaw, and it's as perfectly edited a movie in terms of its pacing and intensity. But the more times you watch it, the more sort of subtle layers of themes you get. The background, the implied background of the family, the
Hmm.
background of the hippie kids coming through town, and so on. And because Chainsaw had been really the main film that he'd been remembered for, and the main film that had been analyzed, we wanted to produce a book that had two full essays about the Mangler.
Nice.
So,
Right, 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 right.
which is in the process of really being reappraised as far as its reputation goes. That had essays that discussed his final film, Jen, that had essays that included his documentary about Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was a really rewarding couple of years. The research, we managed to come to Austin to check out the Tobe Hooper archive there, and it's small, but there was a lot of great stuff in it. Just
That's
these
awesome.
letters, and there was a half smoked cigar in a plastic bag.
Yeah, see, I love all this, and I want to throw a theory past you that ties into maybe the topic we're gonna talk about a little bit later. So you talked about the rawness, like the aggression, like what Toby Hooper was able to capture. This kind of like, I get the impression it's almost like a raw nerve in a way. Like he was able to kind of refine this thing that most people feel on an emotional level. He was kind of able to bring it out and make it into a story, kind of make sense of it, right? And I get the same feeling when I watch a Todd Solondz movie.
Oh, yeah,
So I just finished Welcome to the Dollhouse. It's one of the reasons it's on my mind, the Radiance release.
love that movie.
Um, it's amazing, right? Like he saw the Wonder Years and he was like, that's not how middle school is. you know, or at least not his version of it. And so then he makes this thing which is just so raw and like unfiltered and uncomfortable. I mean, not uncomfortable compared to what he made next, but like uncomfortable because you just feel like it's not it's almost like it's like close to reality, but it's a little bit outside of reality. It's not quite as bad as that for most people, although I'm sure there are some. but it's like this hyper reality almost that he does. And then I think the person who also comes to mind with this same like ability to kind of harness this raw energy is someone like Cassavetes.
Mm.
That's just like, it's just people yelling at each other for an hour and a half, but there's like levels to it,
Mhm.
right? It's not just people yelling at each other. It's like, I don't know, that you can tell that there's nuance to the emotion even though they're being loud.
Yeah, absolutely. As opposed to, most of the uh, Hollywood uh, stamp of approval films that go through um,
Yeah.
layers and layers of auditing before they're approved to go out to the masses. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And they have their place too, right? But they don't hit you on that same level of like of I don't know, of like shared experience or something. It's
Right.
like you watch some of these movies and you're like, oof, like I feel that as much as I, understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so one of the big questions I had for you beyond making this a Hooper cast, although I'm sure I'd be happy to do that as well. I will say one thing. I was not expecting, just real quick, and then we'll jump in. I was not expecting the crocodile in Eaten Alive to look so much like a rubber crocodile. The first time I saw that, I did laugh pretty hard. Um
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do on a small budget? But that was one moment that it kind of cracked me up.
Well, he certainly wrestled with low budgets as best he could.
No,
Um,
totally.
Eaten Alive is kind of a compromised film because he ended up kind of walking off the set, and it was finished by producers. So some of that stuff you know for sure is Hooper, and then other stuff you're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not sure he had anything to do with this part. Um, so that's a really interesting film in his history because of the fact that you have to kind of parse out, what stuff he actually was responsible for.
Just like
Uh,
David Lynch's Dune. I saw that recently for the first time. And I was
yeah,
like, I don't know that. And then I found out later that he disowned the film or whatever. So I could kind of see that.
he disowned it, but there are a lot of moments in there that I'm like, I'm pretty sure Lynch is the reason we hear people going shy haloo and the spice,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
those are the moments that I love the best in that movie. So
No, there are some individual moments that are amazing. Even just like the flying like general or whatever. That
yeah,
one
yeah.
scene where he's actually he just like comes off as a complete maniac. It was great. Um, but yeah, one of the questions when I saw your profile, so one of the things we didn't talk about in the intro was that you teach rhetoric, literature, and then film and media studies, right? So I'm assuming this is to undergrads.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got this, it's kind of a Faustian bargain where they tell me I can teach whatever I want, but it's always going to be to freshman non-majors. So it has to be the very surface level of so it's like you can teach Shakespeare, you can teach Aristotle, you can teach Jim Wynorski, it doesn't matter. But it's always going to be to people who have never heard of any of it.
Well, I think Wynorski has a lot of comparisons to Shakespeare in my mind, but we can get to that in a minute.
Sure, yeah. But 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 yeah, actually, being able to introduce people to stuff is its
Hmm.
own, it has its own benefits. There the the breadth of stuff that I've been privileged enough to work with has been super fun. And then on my own, I can go in depth and write my articles or whatever. So, I'm proud to say that nearly 20 years of UNC Greensboro students come out of there knowing how to talk intelligently about Frankenhooker.
That's
That's
awesome.
something. That's another thing that might be on my gravestone one day. And
The
it's
Henenlotter. Yeah.
and it's so wonderful because there will be so many students who encounter Frankenhooker who have no interest whatsoever in film studies or even the humanities. They're just there to get the general education credit, and they'll say to me, That movie was actually pretty good.
right? That's so funny. They're like, yeah, I took a film class. Oh, you took some Kurosawa? No, what's that? Sorry, who's that? No, that's awesome. Um, what does it mean to teach rhetoric to a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds? Or how does that go?
That for me is pretty much the most fun because rhetoric is really like the oldest um, subject for teaching in
Hmm.
history, right? It's like
Hmm.
how to get people to see things the way you see them,
Hmm.
right? How to be persuasive, how to communicate effectively, and especially this like COVID generation that missed 2 years of socializing, but spent that time on the internet talking about their like gender identities and ideas of who they were.
Okay.
Um, so they come into school having this really sophisticated vocabulary, um, but some like delayed experiences. And so
Interesting.
they pick up on it even faster. Like, okay, the way I word things, the way that I express myself physically, the way I express myself digitally, um, actually has an impact on how people perceive not just who I am, but the things I'm talking about, the things that matter.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so, yeah, that's something that I really love. Literature and film are just two manifestations of rhetoric, right? Rhetoric is what differentiates us from other animals. The fact that we're able to um, boast and flirt and lie and intimidate and persuade, right? Like
Uh-huh. Right.
just through our words and our tones. Um, yeah, so I don't mean to ramble on about it, but yeah, that was yeah. My PhD is specifically in rhetoric, with film and
Ah.
literature being my kind of minor areas. So I got the gift of gab.
No, I don't think you're rambling at all. In fact, I think that's one of the things I was most interested in talking to you about because there's a perception, I think, when I try to defend a trauma movie or when I try to defend a Wynorski movie, like, especially something like Deathstalker 2, where he's so clearly just like, no, it's incredible, right?
Yes, it's the best.
But like he's so clearly just taking whatever happened with Deathstalker and being like, yo, that's not a fun movie. Like it has the elements of like the sand and the sandal stuff, sword and sandal stuff, but it's not like a fun movie. Let me put a bro in as the hero and like not change his personality at all from an 80s action movie and
Oh
just
yeah,
tell the same story.
but I'm pretty sure John Terlesky is chewing gum throughout the whole movie. Um,
I think so too.
yeah, what a great example. Because the first Deathstalker is really like rapey and dark,
Oh,
and
yeah, right.
but like not dark in an interesting way. But Deathstalker 2 takes it into this cartoonish uh, meta fantasy territory that's just so much fun. Like that's a movie
Yeah.
I could watch any day.
Well, okay, so I'll make my point, and then I'll come right back to Wynorski because this could easily be a Wynorski cast. Um, but as I defend those movies, a lot of people snicker because it's like, well, yeah, I get that you like them, like
All right.
but you have bad taste. And what I think is like, I just tell them like this kind of ties into how I rate on Letterboxd. Like there's some movies, and I probably can't think of a good example right now, but there's some movies I watch. Oh, you know what? One recently, I finally saw Chariots of Fire. Have you ever seen that?
I've actually missed that one.
It's okay. Do you know what I'm talking about though? It's the
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
that
yeah.
song,
I
like
know
that
this
slow motion. Okay, yeah, yeah,
from the
yeah.
scene. Yeah.
And like the whole movie, I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's nothing new happening. It's so overly sentimental. And I know there's gonna be some people listening that's like their favorite movie, so apologies. But like, the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, dude, I can't watch 2 hours of this. Like, it's boring. Like, there's no like the arc that you're telling. You're not even trying to like create something new. You're just sort of mixing around character names and telling a story that's been told like 1,000 times before with a killer soundtrack, and then you know, I know there's an audience for that, but like I can't get excited about that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know that somewhere in the world is Brian Usna coming onto the set of Ticks and being like, well, why don't you just make the Ticks bigger and more violent, and then it's a more interesting movie? And like I want to see that every day, you know?
No, you're so right. Like, and I'll make one more reference to Ryan at Disconnected, because he always says every movie is someone's favorite
Yeah,
movie, right? And
totally, totally.
I take that to heart, and that's okay. But when I'm evaluating a movie for me, um, what I'm looking at is, does this movie do what it says it wants to do?
Oh yeah, tell me more about that. I think this.
Well, if so, the reason I think Deathstalker 2 is a really good movie is because it does exactly what it says it's going to do.
Yeah,
Right? It's going to be funny. It's going to be light. It's going to be breezy. It's going to be um, tongue in cheek and meta, and it's all those things. Then I see a movie like, I'll just go ahead and jump right into potential controversy. I don't like Schindler's List. I don't think it's a good movie.
nice. Go on.
And the reason is because it tells me that it's going to be an artistic, like a high art triumph. But what I see is an exploitation movie
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
where all the Nazis are these like cartoonishly, like one-dimensionally evil, over the top sadists, right? Which is, not that they weren't, but um and there are these like manipulatively sentimental moments that don't need to be there. Like, you're talking about the freaking Holocaust. You don't have to trick me into caring. Like, I'm there for it. Take me somewhere where I can get into like the complications and contradictions of Schindler, you know? Um, now, if anybody listening disagrees and thinks Schindler's List is one of the greatest films of all time, great. Like, it's okay for us not to feel the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
But when I watch that movie, I don't connect with it because I don't feel like it's doing what it says it's going to do. That's how I interpret it.
We
Um,
we got into a big argument on one of the podcasts that, we alternate between like doing interviews and then just discussing a movie.
yeah.
So one of the ones we were discussing, Adam was so excited because I was going to see Vertigo for the first time.
Mm.
And have you seen it before?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I came in and I was like, what's the big deal with this movie?
Oh my God. Yeah.
He was like, what? Like it blew his brain. I was like, yeah, Jimmy Stewart or whatever is kind of a jerk.
Yeah. He's a
Like
total.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't
Vertigo.
get it.
Vertigo is where Alfred Hitchcock tells us what a misogynist he really is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's a better version of Vertigo is
Hmm.
uh, Michele Soavi's Della Morte del More, Cemetery Man.
Oh, you know what? I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen that, but I
Oh
have it.
man,
I have a copy.
check it out. It's basically a remake of Vertigo, but
Uh,
in a cemetery with zombies and Rupert Everett.
Done. Done. You had me at Cemetery with Zombies, but it's funny to think of Rupert Everett there. What's the one that he made with I will always love Suave for the one that he made with the theater with the owl.
Oh, Stage Fright, yeah,
Stage Fright. Sorry,
which
yeah.
coincidentally shares a title with a Hitchcock movie.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Um, I just recently saw this week on the film club that we're recording this on the 27th of April. So this week on the film club, we're just watching Body Double,
Mm, mhm.
and there's a lot of Hitchcock kind of influences in that, and there's even some Vertigo type storylines in there as well.
Oh, for
Um,
sure, yeah.
but uh, but yeah, I'll have to go see Cemetery Man or Della Morte, Della Morte. That sounds. It's been on my list forever, but this will raise it up a lot higher now.
Yeah, and that
Um,
one is criminally missing a restored high definition version. Um,
Well, I can say this because this comes out after the news is dropped. So everyone needs to stop well, not stop, but Severin needs to, in addition to making these amazing Emmanuel box sets, they need to now put some time into some of these lost Italian movies that are either expensive to restore or not out for whatever reason. Because I think Suave there's a couple of them, right? Like The Church or The Sect. There's a
Yeah.
few of those, right? That um, I think are not, they don't have like a great release. Like it's an old Blu-ray or something.
Yeah, and he did some cool Italian TV films like Uno Bianca. Um, he did a biopic of Saint Francis that's really good,
Okay,
but
interesting.
it's only available on DVD and I think out of print. Um, and most recently he did most of the first season episodes of Rocco Schiavone, the cold case
Oh yeah.
CSI type detective show.
Awesome.
It's been really popular. I love Michele Soavi, man. That dude to me is a filmmaker whose artistry has not been properly discovered. And Cemetery Man is his masterpiece for sure.
Okay. Well, I'll watch it as soon as I can. And but there's there was somebody that I had on recently from that has lived in Asia the whole time. Do you know, are you familiar with the names Mike Leader and Arne Avenema? They do a lot of commentaries on like a lot of the Shaw Brothers movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. They've been on like Ryan's show, right? The Disconnected. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen those guys.
And
Yeah, they're great.
they I asked them this question, and I think it ties well into what you said as well. If you look at Hong Kong cinema, Japanese cinema, and Italian cinema,
Mm.
for and then if you get the even lower budgets, Thai cinema, Indonesian cinema, this is happening there as well, Filipino cinema, they're like they really have some fun in the exploitation genres.
Yeah, they
Like,
do.
America, there's some cool films that have come out. Like, have you ever seen The Witch Who Came from the Sea?
Oh, Arrow puts that out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that came in. I've got that box set that it's in, but I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, I'll watch Cemetery Man, Della Morte, Della Morte. You watch that one. I want to hear what you think about that because that is
Okay,
not what I was expecting. It's
next time
like
we.
it's like a low budget possession.
Okay, great.
Uh,
Okay, we'll exchange notes next time we
yeah.
when we discuss. Cool.
So that's, there's a few things here, but like certain countries, anyways, I'm getting a little off topic, but like certain countries really lean into that. And I think it's fun to see the way that, you have like our version of Hollywood say, well, everything is like in this formula. But
Mm.
really, like a lot of countries have been doing that for a long time. They'll say like, some Italian producers like, okay, it has to have this many naked women, it has to have this many like kills or whatever. But after that, I don't care. And
Yeah.
so you see some wild stuff that makes for some amazing movies.
Well, that's and this gets us into Joe Bob Briggs territory, but that's for reasons I'll explain in a second. When I teach my cult films classes, which is where the Frankenhooker comes in, um, I I kind of orient the students right away that most of these films are going to be what's called exploitation films, and the reason and the types of films that are selected for the class is that if you are a person who does not want to compromise your vision as a director and you're working with low budgets, um, if you're in an exploitation genre, you are more likely to be able to sell your film as a viable commercial product if it has what Joe Bob calls the three B's, right? Blood, breasts, beasts.
Nice.
If you have those exploitation elements, then you can do whatever you want. This is George Romero's whole career, right? Like
Yeah.
you have the zombies, you have the violence, whatever. Then you can make whatever statements you want. Now, of course, most exploitation directors are just exploitation directors, and they're selling TNA and whatever. But in the exploitation field, if you're an artist trying to work outside of the mainstream, if you're a woman director, if you're a black director, right? Like
Hmm.
Jamal Fanaka, who came out of the LA Rebellion in the 70s, he made primarily exploitation films like Penitentiary and
Yeah.
Welcome Home, Brother Charles, MMA, all these films that had these real like sophisticated and intense artistic statements, but wrapped up in a package that was commercial, right? This
Yeah.
exploitation thing. So yeah, that's another reason that I kind of gravitate towards this field, not to celebrate the people who are really sleazy, but but to find and give platforms to the people who were working outside the mainstream trying to make a statement.
One of
Um,
my favorite interviews on this exact thing. So Luigi Cozzi, right, who was so talented,
yeah.
such a great artist, was on an interview of an '88 films release called just Gestapo's Last Orgy.
Yep, I know
And
that film.
the director is called Cesare. Oh shoot, I can look it up here in a second. But he was a friend of Cozzi's, and
Mhm.
so they asked Cozzi to come on and talk about him, and he was it's an awesome interview because he's like, look, he liked he had a big vision and he liked his women and he liked to put them in his movies and there was really no other point to that. He just wanted it to be
Right.
bigger and like crazier. And he goes, I've never seen Gestapo's Last Orgy. I probably won't, but I have a good idea of what happens in it knowing him. So that's like the most clear like elucidation I've heard of exactly what you just described. There's some people that they're just in it because that's what they want to make and like whatever.
And you
Um,
compare that to somebody like Tinto Brass, right? There's this like
yeah.
Indiegogo going on around a Tinto Brass restoration, but he was obviously obsessed with women and women's bodies and everything, but his films are less. Um, how do I put it? He made like Salon Kitty, the film that he made. I'll compare that to Gestapo's Last Orgy, right?
Uh-huh.
Salon Kitty is this film that's also kind of categorized in the Nazi exploitation
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
subgenre, but it's this real um, deep dive into the kind of decadence and debauchery of the post World War One, pre World War Two um, German like arts and intelligentsia scene. Um, it has Ingrid Tulin in it
Right,
as
right.
this incredible performance as a as the matron of this brothel, and it satirizes, right, the kind of the uh, emasculated um, nonsense of the Nazi man, right? But it does
Yeah.
it does it while also having all of this like sleazery in there that sells the movie, and then so much of Brass's other work really gets into uh, I think mostly sophisticated depictions of eroticism and love and relationships and the kind of folly of the capitalist versions of monogamy, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh, but at the same time, right, you're going to see lots of butts and boobies, right?
Yeah.
So uh, but you look at it, but watching a Tinto Brass film is different than watching a I don't know, just your run of the mill butts and boobies type of movie. I don't
Yeah,
know.
for sure. There's not to say that directly related, but Fellini covered a lot of the same material. He just didn't have a lot of those elements and like a lot of the nudity and stuff. And
Right,
it was more of a, I don't know, it was a different look at it, but it's the same topics that were covered there. Um,
right.
but I think of that there's that extreme, but then I think of people like Jack Hill who just were able to do what he wanted. And like, that's for me, like there's certain people that I'm able to uncover. Like I'm embarrassed, I can't remember the name, but the director of the Prisoner 701 Scorpion movie
Oh,
with Mike Okaji,
yeah,
like that is a work of art that happens to be a woman in prison movie for like the kind of underlying theme, but or like for moments, it's like a woman in prison movie. But that is like I was stunned. It's like this beautiful work of art, like bright colors. Some of it's even like set on a stage with
yeah,
like this overly theatrical stuff, and I'm like, man, like I love these movies. Like there's so much creativity going into the creation of this. Or if you just see it on the cover, you're like, oh, okay, I don't know, whatever. I don't really want to see a woman in prison movie, but
yeah. It's funny. Like if you look at the history of literature, right? Like, uh, there really aren't that many taboo topics,
okay,
and that's because um, so much for scholars, right? So much literature has been available that we've been able to look at it all. But with film, the way the kind of and film is really the youngest, right, art form still, at only about 130 years old.
right, right, right.
With film, because film is the most expensive and delicate art form, like something like 80% of all silent films are lost forever.
Right,
Like
right, right.
what we see of the silent era is about 20% of what was actually made,
Crazy.
right? How many masterpieces? Um, and so much of film history, especially in America, has been heavily censored.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm.
and then the very availability, right? When the first film studies programs came into being, what do you show? You show the stuff that you can get a hold of. And so the canon, such as it is these like 2 dozen white dudes, right, whose films were available to colleges to screen. And what the great thing about this simultaneous decline and apotheosis of physical media with all the boutique
Uh-huh.
companies is that all of these films outside of mainstream Hollywood, art house cinema in Europe, big studios in Japan, Hong Kong, etc.
Hmm,
All of the stuff that people were going to see at the time, um, but had been previously lost to subsequent generations because it wasn't available to see. Now is being restored and distributed, and all of these filmmakers are gaining new audiences and being reassessed, and we're having a much more expansive understanding of film history,
yeah.
much like we do of literature. There's not just one way to tell a story. There's not a clear divide between so-called high art and low art.
Well,
Um,
you, before but that's a perfect segue into the big thing I wanted to cover.
yeah,
Just so it's recorded. The director's name is Shunya Ito. Shunya, the guy who did Female Prisoner. I just had to look it up.
cool.
But this is the main reason I want to bring you on. So thank you for getting us there. You know, at the end of the day, it's just storytelling,
Right.
right? And I think you have people. I was did an interview with some graphics designers, and not surprisingly, their love for movies started from the visual side,
Mhm.
most for both of them, right? They were really drawn to the posters and the artwork that, and then some of the still shots they saw in like magazines and stuff. So that was their entry into movies. But I think whether you're telling the story visually, like I guess the extreme example would be like a Ken Russell or like a Jodorowsky or something. They really almost don't even care about the dialogue. It's almost there just as a way of moving to get to these crazy visuals they want to show, right? Or Guy Madden might fit into that. Or
Yeah.
you're on the other end of really like these strong like storytellers. Um, I don't even know what the word is, like auditory storytellers, but like they're actually just like they care about the dialogue, and like
Yeah,
everything is
the
like the
tight
Coen
frame.
brothers or whatever, right? Like every word is like carefully planned out. But like you have this wide breadth of like you leave you go into a movie. You said something that's really important to me that I want to like dig into a little bit more, but like you go into a movie, you spend the first 10-15 minutes kind of trying to figure out what it's going to be.
Mm.
And I think I was really annoyed because I saw an Arrow release of a movie recently called The Ghoul. Have you ever seen this? It's from like 5 years ago.
I've seen the release, but I haven't watched the movie. No.
So you would assume it's like some kind of a creature movie or some kind of beast or goblin or something scary, but it's not. It's a psychological movie, like almost like Shock Corridor, but a
Oh,
little bit. So like the name totally threw me off. So I sat down. I was just waiting for like, anyways. But those kind of moments aside, you kind of figure out what the movie's gonna be, and then I think for me, I spend the first kind of half of the movie, let's say, trying to understand what it is, and then kind of realigning my expectations if it's different than what I thought going in. And then the back half of the movie, sort of just sitting back and figuring out, do I buy it or not? Like, do they, like, is it gonna, is it something that I believe? Like, did they pull it off, basically?
right.
Right. And sometimes even the last 30 seconds can do that. If it's just like there's this crazy movie Vinegar Syndrome put out called The Caller. Have you seen that by chance? Malcolm
Oh,
McDowell.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like the first, if it's a 90-minute movie, 88 minutes of it, I was like, what is this? And in the last 2 minutes, I was like, oh, I love it. Um, sometimes that happens. But that's like the initial experience of going through it, right? And what I feel like I've noticed and what I try to bring into my ratings or reviews or discussions or the films I get excited about as I'm picking up patterns for myself, it kind of just goes back to like, are they telling a story that I think is interesting?
Yeah,
Are they telling, and like, it kind of is as simple as that.
yeah, yeah. And as you say, there's so many different ways of telling a story. The tight traditional 3 act structure, something that's more experimental, visual, etc. But for me, it goes back to, does the movie succeed in what it tells me it's going to be? Um, and it's really, uh, the physiology of interpreting a film is so interesting, right? Like when we talk about literature, we're talking about technology.
Okay.
Like letters are symbols that we've kind of agreed signify certain sounds, and then words are these things that signify certain things. So when you read a book, it's a technological interaction. It's also a technological interaction to watch a movie, but there's a different neurological interaction, right? Like you're watching these images and these edits, these cuts, right? Like how do we understand what it means to cut from a shot of a bone flying through the air to a space station in space? Like how do we
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
comprehend,
yeah.
right? It's really quite amazing, right? You've got everything from the original development of film, right? The persistence of vision, right? The fact that our eyes are constantly lagging a little bit behind as we
Okay.
process images, like when you look through a flip book, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Film is it's a flip book. It's
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
images that run, and our eyes kind of fill in the blanks, so it looks like it's moving. Um, but in addition to that, the persistence of vision, we've got these cognitive leaps that we make whenever the filmmaker makes a cut. And so the development of continuity editing and parallel editing and flash forwards and flashbacks, all of these in the last 130 years have required major leaps in our kind of um, neural evolution. Okay, so how do I get to Wynorski from this? Um,
I, wait,
so,
before you do, I have a question about that.
yeah,
Will you remember your point to get to Wynorski?
maybe.
I hope you do. But that's a really interesting description of why I think I like the French New Wave so much,
Hmm.
at least the films that do these jump cuts,
Yeah.
because I think it's almost like, one of the problems I have with, uh, I've been proven wrong on this recently, so I'm softening up. But for a long time, I hated movies made in the Hollywood system in the 50s.
Hmm.
That was just like, there was very few that I liked. I have found a few. But it's almost like in this first round of filmmaking, the big budget kind of Hollywood filmmaking, it's like they took so long to show one thing. Like,
Hmm.
they would be like a build up, and then you would see the reaction, and then you would see it play out, and then you would see somebody holding each other, and then you would like it was like everything was so overblown, and like, and then I found myself bored. Like, yeah, I got the point back here. I don't need the extra 3 minutes to like further reinforce of what's happening. And maybe this is what I like so much about horror films and even French New Wave is like they kind of it seems like these directors intuitively understand that how much you need to really like feel something, and then they're good at like editing at the right or cutting at the right moment where like, you got just enough of what you need to either feel something emotionally or to get scared or like, anyways, that's putting some pieces together for me that I hadn't really connected before.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really what a filmmaker does, right? Is figure out what images, what arrangement of images, and what pace of the arrangement of images is going to work. And sometimes it needs to be a 3 hour movie, right? Like Lawrence of Arabia or Midsommar.
Mhm.
And then other times it needs to be an 80-minute movie like Deathstalker 2 or Chopping Mall or whatever. But in all of those examples, right? Both the films that are going for this sort of cultural high art designation, and those that are going for the more like just pure entertainment, disposable entertainment designation. They're still making the same kinds of choices, and they're
Right.
still engaging us on this not just neurobiological level, but on a cultural level. And one of the things that I think um, makes so-called trash filmmakers like Wynorski so interesting is the way that they deploy cultural markers and sort of meta-filmic winks at the audience, right? Like to enjoy a Jim Wynorski movie, you really need to know a lot about film history.
Mm.
Um, I mean, you can enjoy Wynorski without knowing a lot, but you'll enjoy him a lot more if you know, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What
all
he's
of the
winking at.
all of the winks and nods, and um, the same goes for filmmakers like Jess Franco. As Tim Lucas famously wrote, you can't see one Jess Franco movie without seeing them all. And well, the guy made over 200 movies, so um, is that possible? um, and I will brag here by saying I have 104 Jess Franco movies in my collection.
How? How many of them are out of print? There must be 50 that are out of print.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm hoping to finance my retirement with them at some point. But
You might be able to. You have to find that sweet spot though, because I feel like there's going to be a point where, like they're worth their maximum amount and then diminishing returns at some point, right?
yeah, I got to be. Well, I just pay attention to Blue Underground's release calendar. Whenever they upgrade one to 4K. But
Yeah,
anyway,
you yeah.
that's a different topic. But you know what I'm saying? Like so much of the so-called high art is actually, in my opinion, more disposable than the low art because it's not um it doesn't ask a whole lot of the audience.
Yeah, right.
Uh, and the audience today is more, Cronenberg talked about this in an interview a couple of years ago. Film audiences today are so much more knowledgeable about the technique of film. I mean, kids grow up, kids come into my film classes all the time. They already know, well, they don't know that they know, but they talk in terms of cuts and edits and low angles and
Uh-huh.
high angles just in life, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
They grow up in the rhetoric of media production
Yeah, sure.
because they grow up with sophisticated um, editing and filming
Right.
devices in their hands. So whereas when I started my career, I was teaching people like how images can be edited together to tell a story. Now I'm helping students understand how they already know how images tell a story. Like they have to slow down and back up and say, okay, this is this, this is that. I
Mhm.
already know what this is, but I need to like stop and pay attention to it. Um, and I think that's part of the reason why um, students respond so well to lower budget um, independent films when they get a chance to see them for the first time because they've grown up on this kind of like sugary diet of MCU
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Um, and um, and oftentimes like when I ask, hey, have you has raise your hand if you've seen this film, and people will raise their hand and I'll say, have you really seen it? And they'll say, well, I've seen clips.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, then you haven't fucking seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. So getting the current generation to slow down and actually watch a whole movie and
Yeah.
get the whole story is its own its own battle. But then they kind of appreciate, oh wow, this is a whole, I didn't realize I could watch a movie this way.
There's a there's a powerful metaphor you said for adults ingesting news, but we won't go down that path. What about Larry Cohen? Has Larry Cohen
Hmm.
come up in your class at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I'm currently working on a Larry Cohen project. Hopefully, that'll come out in the next year or so. Um, so several of his films come up on my syllabi. Black Caesar is one that comes up a lot,
Oh, cool.
um, and especially in the last 4 or 5 years, tied to um, the politics and
Mhm.
realities of today. Like when kids see Black Caesar, they're like, "Holy shit, yes!"
Yeah.
Um, I also like to show some combination of either the stuff or God told me to.
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess with politics being the way they are right now, It's Alive is about to get more relevant. Um,
Could be, yeah.
you know, Cohen is always a big surprise to people because whenever I get into black exploitation, the history of the black exploitation cycle is always really, really compelling to students.
Yeah, sure.
Um, because they see stuff get complicated, right? Because the term black exploitation was actually coined by members of the NAACP who hated these movies, right? They hated Sweetback's Badass Song. They hated Shaft. They hated, because not everybody in the NAACP, to be fair, to be clear, but certain members felt like these films, Superfly, were perpetuating stereotypes, and they had a point. But the problem is, that black exploitation label immediately got co-opted by Hollywood and got applied to everything. You watch a film like MMA by Jamal Fanaka, that's not an exploitation film. It's a dramatic comedy.
I just had this discussion about Solomon King, the Deaf Crocodile put out.
Yes, Solomon King.
It's that's not a blaxploitation movie.
Not, and I always show Cleopatra Jones
Oh
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
especially for younger students who have never really seen black heroes before, like
Mhm.
Cleopatra Jones. Not only does that movie break all of the black exploitation stereotypes, but you got a film where there's no nudity, there's no really exploitation of women's sexuality. It's just a new it might be too much to call it nuance, but it's a film that's really about a powerful woman character who
Yeah.
takes no shit and makes a difference in the community. You know, um, uh, why did I bring that up though? There was a
Well, we were talking about how like not everything fits under that. It got
oh
co-opted.
right. Yeah. It got co-opted and just covers so much stuff. Like people get really excited to understand the complexity of that period of time when not only were there films where the main characters, the heroes, were black, and many of the filmmakers behind the camera were black, but also that there were collaborations between black and white filmmakers.
Right.
You know, like The Mac was and Cleopatra Jones both were written by Max Julian, but both were directed by white directors who were like involved in the civil rights movement and Black Power movement and so on. So there are moments within this um, period of time where if you look close enough, you'll find some real work being done, but you'll also see some stuff that's super problematic and probably Quentin Tarantino loves. Um, um, but yeah, like what it's all about is getting into the specifics and the complications and the I keep using this word nuances, but it's the right word of film history.
Do you do you think because early on, and I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay.
I'm just
No,
talking.
it's you're making some awesome points. I mean, I think early on where they would literally just try to emulate a theatrical experience on a movie with a movie camera,
Yeah,
right? Like you had a lot of these early things could easily be, I mean, you had experimental filmmaking going on from, I mean, Millet was like literally an experimental filmmaker. So from the very beginning, but once
yeah,
you started getting into the producers trying to make money off of these, I think they were trying to figure out like what's an analogy for this. Well, okay, well, let's give them something that's going to look like,
right.
what's on a stage. And then even if you go back further, what's on a stage is just coming from written word. And so I think like, there's this legacy of storytelling where I think storytelling has always been visual,
Yeah,
and the best stories make you create a world in your mind. Like I remember even growing up just reading like the Hardy Boys. Like I think there's a reason those are such timeless stories for kids, right? You just it's like a big world, and there's like so much you don't know about, and like how are they uncovering all this stuff? I mean, there's silly and simple coming in as an adult, but like some of these stories are so rich. Um, I even remember like, is it Plato's cave or Socrates' cave? Who told the
Plato.
story?
Yeah,
Plato's cave, right?
yeah,
I remember the first time I heard that story, it just like I could almost feel my mind growing about like,
yeah.
oh, like my view of things. Like, am I in a cave? Like, like am I the one who's in a cave, or like am I above, or I don't know. Like, and were those people who are walking around above, were they also in a cave? Like it just raises all these interesting questions. Like, but it all starts at like this basic level of storytelling. And I think um I that's why I was so excited to talk to you, because it, I don't know what this is, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Like, how have you been tempted to go down the path of really leaning into like the canonical side of cinema, or is that been a conscious effort of your part to like not go down the dark side, or like how do you kind of balance that? Do you ever feel that pressure?
Oh yeah, man. I'm so conflicted. So I'm a very obsessive person that likes to put things in order and do things systematically.
Okay.
And unfortunately, Aristotle once said something to the effect of to 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 be an effective rhetorician, you should know as much as possible about as many things as possible.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so, so, so my project has been to try to see everything, which is of course,
uh,
and I also I had a formative experience with my father. Um, around around the time that I started getting into film seriously, which would have been 1997, 98, when I was an undergraduate in college.
Amazing year for films, by the way. Just amazing time for film.
Yeah. Well, Titanic had come out, and he asked me if I'd seen it, and I said, "No, fuck that movie. I hate that shit." And he said, "Well, have you seen it?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, you can't say it's bad if you haven't seen it." And so eventually I saw it, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a special effects bonanza. Like, oh wow, unbelievable. The whatever. Scripts are really cheap. Like, why not focus on the script? But anyway,
It's awesome. I love you
yeah.
so much. Zach's gonna hate this part. Okay. I'll just sorry. Please remember your point. But
Okay.
I have a running joke with him that Michael Bay and James Cameron are the same person because of how little both of them focused on dialogue.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be pissed that this is coming into this episode now. I hope he listens to it.
Yeah, well, people we'll talk about James Cameron in a minute. But the impact of my interaction with my dad at that time was like, okay, I will not say a movie sucks if I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So like I have no idea if like Bumblebee is good. It might be. You know? And I'm not going to be able to tell you if the next Transformers movie is good. I just won't be able to say. But I can tell you the first one was bad, in my opinion. And of course, it's someone's favorite movie, and that someone is not someone I want to talk to.
Which
But
is also okay.
but yeah, James Cameron is a really key figure in what I'm talking about, in the sense that this is a guy who is technically a master, right?
Yeah.
Like his films are incredibly influential. They're incredibly well made technically, but I don't like any of them, and it's a I know that everybody else does, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
don't get mad at me. I'm not mad at you, um, but they don't work for me because for me they just feel hollow. They feel like technical exercises, and that includes the Terminator movies and Aliens. Like I can watch those movies and enjoy them on a sort of beat to beat level, and the action and everything, but I just don't really want to see them again, you know. And it's funny, right? Because I do want to see Jim Wynorski's Extreme Limits again.
Right.
you
Right.
know, which is
Right.
which is a film that is like half stock footage, but it's so masterful the way he edits around the stock footage to accentuate the character beats that he has for the for these people who are um, for anybody who hasn't seen it before, a um, a father-daughter spy team discovers a weapon created by Nikolai Tesla that can destroy the world, and they're bringing it back to the CIA on a like commercial aircraft, which is then hijacked by terrorists and then crashes into the Alaskan wilderness. And it's a combination of people having to survive the elements and escape the terrorists to get the weapon to the good guys. Right? It's dumb, but it does what it says it's going to do, and it's really really enjoyable because you go into the movie says what it is, and then it gives you that. And a lot of times with these large budget Avatar type movies, it tells me it's going to be this grand epic that's going to like solve climate change, and I'm like, this is Dancing with Smurfs. It's not. It's hollow to me.
I don't know how people are going to respond to this whole conversation, but you're my biggest fan. I'm not a massive Cameron fan for the exact same reasons, and I've even defended his technical prowess on the podcast before. So you're making me smile a lot right now.
Yeah, you
Um,
might want to turn off comments for this one.
but I think it goes back to this thing about nuance you brought up a couple times, right? Could Wynorski make Avatar? Probably not, right? Like, but he knows himself, and he wouldn't go out to do it.
He'd
I
make
don't mean
something like it.
exactly. I don't mean his version of it. I mean, I would like to see that, but like, he wouldn't go make that movie. And like, he knows who he is. He knows what he can do, and he's just become so good at it that he's just like this kind of kung fu master at making a Wynorski movie.
Yeah,
And like I love that. Like you see certain people um that they just jump around, and they don't really ever find a style because they just, maybe like in Cameron's sake, his style would be just making something bigger and more expensive than last time. And that's cool because like some of the technologies and techniques and stuff that he's created are being used by other people, and like he has influenced cinema history, no doubt. And
for
like
sure.
I'm happy he exists. I don't have to go see those movies. Um, but like I am happy that he has a place. And even Michael, like I don't know if this is true or somebody was just messing around, but I heard that the last Transformer movie, like the final one, is going to be 3 hours and 40 minutes long.
Is this
Just like
is this the Beast Wars that's in the previews right now? Because I see
I
it
don't know,
every time I go to the theater. I see a preview of it. I'm like, oh my god.
maybe it's that one. I was just like, for fuck's sake, man, come on, like, But hey, look, it's probably going to make a ton of money, right? Like it'll make if they spend 300 million to make it, it'll make 1 billion, and it's
Oh sure.
a cash cow for them. So whatever.
You know,
Um,
it's funny. This is a bit of a tangent, but uh, when the first Michael Bay Transformers movie came out, I got really excited because I'm a 45-year-old guy, so it means I grew up with the original
mhm,
cartoon and
mhm,
the original
mhm.
toys, and I had Metroplex, I had everything, man. I was like my allowance went to Transformers every week. I was not a GI Joe guy. I was a Transformers guy. But so I went to see the first Michael Bay movie, and was like, ah, so disappointed. And a couple months after, or maybe a year or so after, um, my local theater screened a 35 millimeter print of what was it, 85 or 86?
Oh, the Transformers cartoon?
Yeah, the animated Transformers film. And
Yeah.
so I go to see it, and the theater is completely full of dudes, and
Mhm. Sure.
and I sit down next to this guy who looks exactly, and I'm not bullshitting, he looks exactly like comic book guy from The Simpsons.
Nice.
And and I'm sitting next to him, and we kind of like look at each other and nod, and like, yeah, it's really exciting because the Transformers animated film, like it's a serious PG movie.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
like Optimus Prime dies like right away in
Oh
a
yeah.
just like super violent and
Oh yeah.
upsetting way. Like this is a real film. If
Oh
you're
yeah.
going to it as a kid, you're going to get fucked up. And
80s were good at that. Yeah, they had some dark
the
content in the
80s,
movies.
the 80s did not care about
No.
trigger warnings for sure. And it gets to the point in the film where Spike, right? For those of you who are not Transformers fans, Spike is the human who has kind of become a partner of the Transformers. There's a part in that film where Spike says shit. And it's like the first curse word ever in a Transformers media. And when he says it, like the whole theater erupts in applause. And so the reason I bring that up is the role that nostalgia plays in
Mhm.
a lot of uh, well, I mean, this is for nostalgia is important in literature as well as film, but these images, right, that not only are about youth but remind us of our youth.
Mhm.
Um, kind of come into play. And I think filmmakers like Wynorski, right, are not necessarily appealing to our older and wiser natures, right?
Mm,
Like like I'll give it to Spielberg, you know, like a lot of times, no, actually, no, not Spielberg, Scorsese. A lot of times he's going for us where we are, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Spielberg and Wynorski, what they have in common is they're going for us where we were, and
Mm,
that's okay. That's great, right? Like nostalgia is a great feeling. Reliving moments from our youth is a great feeling. You know, watching a film like E.T. and remembering when we saw it as a kid, or
mhm.
if we're watching it for the first time, remembering that like childlike wonder that we have had is great. Uh, but again, you know, it all comes down to what's the film telling us it's going to be, right?
Yeah,
Like a film by Wynorski tells us, you know, we're going to just have a good time. It's not going to be super adult. Um, Spielberg oftentimes is in the nostalgia era, you know, area, but is telling us that that's up in this
yeah, yeah,
uh, epiphany. You're gonna have an epiphany about life, and I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, like,
and that's okay.
yeah, like, and it's fine. You know, like, okay, ET, it's an exploitation movie. Jurassic Park, it's an exploitation movie. Just be
Totally.
there. It's a good exploitation movie. Just accept what you are. You know, like
By the way, before we move on from Jurassic Park, have you seen the most recent one, Jurassic World, Lost Kingdom or something?
I have not. I
Dude, it's awesome.
is it really?
Oh, they talk about leaning into what it is.
Hmm.
Like it's gotten some bad reviews, but I think the reviews don't understand what they were trying to do. It's like balls to the wall, a like a dino movie. It's awesome.
Okay, I'll take that as a reason to watch it then.
Is I was yeah, Zach. This is one thing where we agree on. Like he came to the theater and he was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Okay, whatever." But I saw it on a plane and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is good." Um, but we've talked a lot about you know, and I want to maybe like just kind of I don't know if there's a way to summarize this in a sentence. I'm probably overreaching here, but like, you know, the thing that's always drawn me to Lloyd Kaufman as well, or Wynorski, or some of these people, although they're making different kinds of movies, is that I think you said it very well. There's a intelligence
Mhm.
driving it, and so you're not like there's plenty of examples. Like, have you ever seen Champagne and Bullets? Like, there's
Yeah.
not an intelligence driving that movie. It's fun as
Yeah.
hell, but
Mhm.
it's not because there's an intelligence behind it. The whole vanity project thing is a subgenre that I'm just fascinated with.
Oh yeah.
But for certain people, and I think Lloyd Kaufman fits this, there's even though they're in dick and fart jokes in his case, and like if you're gonna explode somebody's head, you cut to a watermelon just long enough to see that it's a watermelon that's exploding and not a head. Like there's, you know, he's in that he's in a juvenile state, like a puerile state, but there's an intelligence behind it that drives not I mean not all of his movies are good, let's be honest, but for the better ones, like and it's the same thing across any exploitation genre that I don't even know how to like exactly put words to it, but I can tell when there's like a depth and a substance to this thing that I'm watching. And in my mind, and I will fight this battle to the day I die, it elevates it up to a conversation with Fellini and with Bergman and with Kurosawa, like these directors that are able to use techniques and the history of cinema to tap into some raw human emotion and
Mhm.
draw something out of you that for some people, you know, if some people that watch a Bergman movie just break down weeping because it's tapping into something that they just haven't really put words to in a long time.
Yeah.
And that I think that's why those movies are so popular because once you're exposed to that, it kind of messes with your head. It's like you just you're like latching onto these ideas, and I don't think that Kaufman gets the same respect because he's making Tromeo and Juliet.
Right.
But like, I think he should, because it's the same. It's like he's doing it in a different area, but it's
Yeah.
that same pull to he draws you in, and he's like, no, I'm gonna say something different here.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that this is going to sound like a joke, but I'm being totally serious. The thing that Bergman and Kaufman have in common is that they made their films.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I have a Lloyd Kaufman story. Gosh, I can't remember what year this was now. 2015, 2016, maybe.
Okay.
Um, they were road showing Return to Newcomb High.
Okay.
And they came, Lloyd Kaufman was coming to Greensboro, which is Greensboro, North Carolina, which is where I live. And so a student of mine actually was working at the venue where Lloyd Kaufman was going to be appearing that night, showing Return to Newcomb High and doing a meet and greet with fans. So he emailed me and let me know that that this was happening and so I could get a ticket. So the afternoon before the event, my wife just happened to be on campus and was talking on the phone with her mom and was telling her how we were going to see Lloyd Kaufman that night. And a woman was walking by and stopped and said, "Did you say Lloyd Kaufman?" And my wife said, "Yeah, we're going to see a trauma movie tonight, Lloyd Kaufman." And it was Lloyd's wife. And she was on campus because she was going to our art gallery.
Yeah, isn't she like huge in the New York art scene or something?
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so they stopped and talked for a few minutes, and then we go to the show. And my student, who I definitely gave an A to, despite the quality of his work, I gave an A to. He brought me over to Lloyd and brought my wife over. And we talked to them for 10 or 15 minutes. They were so gracious, like
That's cool.
totally not in the Lloyd Kaufman like on camera mode. We just had a discussion, right, about cinema and everything. I was like, oh yeah, in my classes I teach these trauma movies and this is how we kind of talk about trauma and their history and what do you think about what you're doing with Return to Newcomb High and everything. And he talked to me like didn't make a single joke, just talked to me seriously about film for a second. And then we said, hey, we actually made a movie in my some of my film students and we made a movie about toddler zombies. It's called Toddler Attack, right? It's about these my wife came up with the idea because she pointed out that toddlers walk like zombies anyway. So we made this film in which and there's gut. I mean, it's like super inappropriate. And we had a poster of it, and we said, "Hey, Lloyd, would you mind signing this poster of Toddler's Attack?" And we told him a little bit about the movie, and he wrote on there, "Do not let Bryan Singer see this movie." Love Lloyd. So we went through this 10, 15 minute like serious conversation about film history and everything. And then he was like, yeah, I'm going to make a pedophile joke.
Oh my God, I love that, man. It's so funny to me that Mel Brooks has received all the credit and attention that he has, and Lloyd Kaufman hasn't. Because I view them both as very similar in terms of what they've done. I think Mel Brooks deserves it all. It's just funny to me that like their humor, they're both so going back to intelligent. I don't know. They're just amazing. But
it's strange because I love Mel Brooks and I'm in no way criticizing Mel Brooks. But I will say Lloyd Kaufman uses way fewer racial slurs.
Oh my gosh. Wait, have you ever heard the commentary for Blazing Saddles?
No, God, no.
Oh my God. Okay, so he defends it and then he like says it in the commentary too. You're like,
oh,
stop,
no.
stop, dude, just stop. Like, you don't have to end your life like this racist way, man. Like
times have changed. No,
Yeah,
no shade on Mel Brooks, who obviously like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is a trailblazer and everything. But it was funny. A couple, what was it, season three, I guess, of the Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. He had the Kaufmans on, both Kaufmans, and to show Trumma's War, and
Oh, cool.
the interview was so funny because Kaufman, as per usual, just said so many offensive things.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, but they were you understood what he was doing. He wasn't he was he was undercutting the offensiveness,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the persona, right, of the white guy producer and everything.
Well,
Um, yeah.
just people that got really offended with the tweets that James Gunn had made, which, by the way, like, fine, like, they were terrible, but
Yeah, not
I
super
do
fun.
no, I do think, like, if you have any experience of trauma, you kind of understand where he came from. Like,
Right.
like, there's no limits in that world. Like, it's not like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of understood.
The problem is that public social media platforms are not the place to workshop jokes.
No, no, no.
I think that was that was Gunn's big, and that's one of the strangest things about um James Gunn's career, right? Is because like he's now the biggest of the big, but every film he makes, you're going to see trauma actors, and you're going
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
a
yeah.
cameo from Lake Coffin. And again, it's that exploitation thing where the more you know about film history, the more you get out of the movie. So even if you're
Totally.
watching something as, look, I'll just say it, as simplistic as Guardians of the Galaxy 2, like, okay, got it, daddy issues, got it. Um, but you're also going to see like all these meta layers and everything
Totally.
that are enjoyable. But I gotta say, man, I miss the James Gunn of Super. That was a film that just knocked me out.
I have a hunch. I mean, it's hard now because he's running DCU, so I don't know when this would happen. But at some point, I think he's going to go back to his roots on some level, even if it's under a pseudonym. I just feel like once you're making, because those movies, they're just fun, right? Like, you're with friends, you're just like hanging out on the weekend and shooting stuff. And I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a pull for that again, especially after running the DCU for a few years, because that seems like the worst job in the world. I don't know who would want that, just because
Well,
of the fans. I mean, I don't even know if they're.
the film the film I'm waiting to see is Plastic Man. Like,
Oh, he'll do it.
let's see if we can get Plastic Man in there.
He'll probably do it. Well, look, as it's obvious at this point, I'm sure I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I think this is a great intro to you. Um, I really, really appreciate you going down this rabbit hole with me tonight. This is exactly what I hoped it would be. I mean, I think I don't know exactly where this passion came from, but I have a desire to balance out the what a good movie is, like,
Yeah.
just, and I think this is a conversation that I'm just kind of building, um, people that I see that are like-minded, and are kind of preaching from the same pulpit, because I think it's important to get this message mixed in, because it's so easy to just fall into a trap of, like you said, 12 white or Japanese people that are, and just go through their filmography. But
And let me be clear, like, I love Orson Welles, I love Fellini and Antonioni, I love Kurosawa and Otsu, um, I love Godard and Truffaut. Like, none of this takes away from any of
exactly,
the stuff that's become canon. It's just adding to it, Like, I also love Ida Lupino. I love um,
the
uh,
Hitchhiker is so good.
yeah, Jamat Fanaka and Jim Wynorski and Roberta Finlay and every filmmaker should be evaluated on what their films are doing.
Yeah.
So the fact that I generally don't like Steven Spielberg doesn't mean that I can't appreciate Duel. I think Duel is his best movie. um, and just because you love, not you, but like any listener might love Spielberg, you might think Minority Report is his best movie, and that's cool. We can talk about both Duel and Minority Report, um, and we can have different opinions. But what's really important is being open to uh, filmmaking and films of every origin, right? Like I'm not saying everybody needs to be a Jim Wynorski fan. Like you can see one of these movies that we talked about tonight and be like, oh, that sucks, and move on. And that's fine, but be open to it. Like,
Yeah.
give it a shot and see if you like it. By the same token, like, if you are like me and started out loving um, Trauma and Full Moon and Wynorski, you need to also check out Spielberg and Scorsese and Fellini and Antonio and Kurosawa and all that. And if you don't like those filmmakers, that's okay, but you got to be open to it. Or you should be open to it. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want.
Especially if you want to be a rhetorician. What'd you call it? A rhetorician?
Yeah, rhetorician, right? Which Plato hated the rhetoricians, right? Because they taught people how to argue for the merits of stuff that he didn't find merit in. So what we've been doing tonight, Plato would probably have us executed for.
Well, I would gladly die for this conversation, though. This is the, like, if I think there's something that's just, I mean, partially because it's with you. I've enjoyed the time with you, but I think like there's something that just feels right to me about watching a movie without any other pressure or voices saying you should like this, should like that. Just watching it and being like, that movie was awesome.
Yeah.
And then figuring out where it fits in, like other people's opinions,
Absolutely.
But just being able to sit back and be like, man, I loved every second of that. Like, that was amazing. And so that's what I'm fighting for more than anything here.
Well, yeah, I'll join that army for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I don't know exactly the context for when you come back. When we find another good topic to dive into, it'd be wonderful to have you back if that would make sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah, anytime.
Awesome. Anything that you want to point people to that you have coming up or you're working on?
Let's see. This is April 20. Now, April, for me, I think it's still April 27th for you. It's April 28th for me.
Right.
Of 2023. There are going to be not one but two books of essays about the career of Wes Craven coming out in late 2023, and I am very lucky to say that I've got essays in each of them. So keep an eye out for some Wes Craven material coming out. In one book, I've written an essay about The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. Make a case for it being a important film.
Can't wait to read that.
And in the other, I write about Wes Craven's television films, of which there were 5. So those are the things that I would promote for this year.
Wonderful.
All things Wes Craven, and maybe next time we talk, we can talk a little bit about how we feel about Craven, especially now that the Scream franchise is moving without him.
Yeah.
2 films so far in the post Craven Scream franchise. I think that's going to be interesting conversation in various places.
Well, yeah, that'll be a fun one. I'm very pro, but that'll be a fun conversation.
Cool.
Thanks for the time, and I'll see you online. I'm sure in many places.
Thank you.